The mahogany doors of the Ashford estate had witnessed countless acts of service over the decades, but none quite like what unfolded. That autumn evening when billionaire Marcus Ashford decided to test the character of a young woman who had quietly captured his curiosity. Elena Rodriguez had scrubbed those same floors her mother once cleaned, carried linens through hallways that cost more than most people's homes, and dusted artwork worth millions with the same gentle care she'd give to a child's drawing. At 23, she moved through the estate like a ghost, seen but never truly noticed, present but never acknowledged. Her mother, Maria, had worked for the Ashford family for 30 years before arthritis, had twisted her hands into painful knots. Now Elena had taken her place, desperate to keep the health insurance that paid for her mother's medication and her younger brother's college tuition. Marcus Ashford watched her sometimes from the shadows of his study. Not in any inappropriate way. He was 72 years old and had buried the love of his life 5 years prior. No, what caught his attention was something else entirely. In a world where his wealth had attracted countless sycophants, gold diggers, and false friends, Elena never asked him for anything. She never lingered when he entered a room hoping for conversation. She never accidentally placed her resume where he might see it. She simply did her work with a quiet dignity that reminded him of a time when integrity wasn't a commodity for sale. His own children had become strangers to him, circling like vultures waiting for his death, their visits always timed with requests for money to fund another failed business venture or to pay off gambling debts. His grandchildren knew him only as the stern old man who wrote checks. Even his household staff had grown comfortable, cutting corners, knowing he rarely left his bedroom anymore. But Elena was different. And Marcus, who had built a technology empire by reading people better than they could read themselves, decided to conduct one final test of human character. The plan was simple. He would pretend to fall asleep in his wheelchair in the garden, leaving his wallet conspicuously displayed on the side table within easy reach. Inside that wallet was $5,000. In cash, more money than Elena. Made in 3 months. He would watch through half-closed eyes as she worked nearby, pruning the roses and sweeping the stone pathway. It was a cynical test, perhaps, but Marcus had long ago stopped believing in the inherent goodness of people. He expected she would take the money. They always did. The October sun cast long shadows across the estate grounds as Marcus positioned himself according to plan. His breathing slowed to a convincing rhythm of sleep. Through his barely open eyelids, he watched Elena approach with her gardening tools. Humming softly to herself, a Spanish lullaby he recognized as one Maria used to sing while working, she began trimming the rose bushes, her movements practiced and efficient. 10 minutes passed. 20. She worked her way closer to where he sat. He could see the moment she noticed the wallet, her eyes widening slightly. She glanced at him, then back at the wallet. His heart sank with familiar disappointment. Here it comes, he thought bitterly. But Elena didn't reach for the wallet. Instead, she quickly removed her gardening gloves and gently draped them over it, shielding it from view. Then she repositioned her wheelbarrow to block the wallet from anyone else who might pass by. She went back to her work without taking a single dollar. Marcus felt something stir in his chest. Surprise, certainly, but not yet conviction. Perhaps she was waiting until she could take it without anyone seeing. He continued his charade. An hour later, Elena finished her work and approached him quietly. "Mr. Ashford," she said softly, gently touching his shoulder. "Mr. Ashford, you should come inside. The evening air isn't good for you." He continued his pretense of sleep. He heard her sigh with concern. Then he heard her footsteps retreat, but only for a moment. She returned with a blanket, his favorite cashmere throw, from the living room, and carefully tucked it around his shoulders. She moved the wheelchair slightly to ensure he wasn't in direct sunlight. She placed the wallet carefully in his lap, patting it gently as if to secure it. "Sleep well," she whispered. "I'll check on you in a little while." Marcus's eyes flew open after she left. He stared at the wallet in his lap, at the blanket around his shoulders, at the gardening gloves still beside him that she'd apparently forgotten in her concern for his comfort. Something was breaking apart inside his chest, decades of cynicism, cracking like ice on a spring river. But he wasn't finished testing. Not yet. Over the next 2 weeks, Marcus staged increasingly elaborate scenarios. He accidentally left a diamond cufflink on the bathroom counter while Elena cleaned. She placed it in an envelope with a note. Found on counter. ER, he left his iPad, unlocked with his banking information. Visible, she set it face down, without looking. He even staged a moment where he pretended to be confused and disoriented, asking her to help him find something in his bedroom safe. She guided him there, then immediately turned her back while he opened it, offering to wait in the hallway. Each test she passed without knowing she was being tested at all. The final test came on a Thursday evening. Marcus had dismissed the entire household staff for the night, claiming he wanted privacy. Only Elena remained, as she'd volunteered, to stay late to help her mother who was visiting the estate to collect her pension check. Marcus lay in his bed having taken medication that would make him genuinely drowsy. Before it took full effect, he called Elena to his room. His bedside table held an unsealed envelope containing $50,000 in cash and a handwritten note that read, "For Elena to thank you for your service." "Elena," he said, his words already slurring slightly from the medication, "I've left something for you. On the table. Take it before you go." Her eyes went to the envelope. Even from across the room, the thick stack of bills was visible. Her hand flew to her mouth. "Mr. Ashford, I can't—" "You can," he said, his eyes closing involuntarily. "You deserve it. Take it, please." He fell asleep not knowing what she would do. When Marcus woke 3 hours later, the envelope was gone. His heart plummeted. So even Elena had her price. The medication must have clouded his judgment. The money was more than anyone could resist. How foolish he'd been to believe. Then he saw the note on his bedside table, written in careful handwriting on the back of his own message. "Dear Mr. Ashford, thank you for your incredible generosity, but I cannot accept this money. It is too much and I have not earned it. My mother taught me that we work for what we receive, and we take only what we have earned through honest labor. I have returned the money to your safe, code 1947, your wife's birth year, which you mentioned once. However, if you truly wish to help my family, I would be grateful if you could help me find a better paying position somewhere, or perhaps provide a reference letter. I want to earn my way forward. Thank you for seeing me as more than just another maid. That has meant more than money ever could. With gratitude and respect, Elena Rodriguez." Marcus read the note 3 times, his hands trembling. Then he did something he hadn't done since his wife's funeral. He wept. He wept for the daughter he wished he'd had, for the grandchildren who saw him only as an ATM, for the years he'd wasted believing that everyone was for sale. He wept because one young woman had reminded him that integrity still existed in the world. The next morning, Marcus called his lawyer. Within a week, several things happened. Elena was enrolled in a full scholarship program at a prestigious business school, funded anonymously but arranged through the Ashford Foundation. Her mother's medical bills were paid in full, with a trust established to cover all future expenses. Her brother's college tuition was secured through graduation, and Elena herself was offered a position as Marcus's personal assistant, not to clean, but to learn the business, with a salary triple what she'd been making. When Elena tried to refuse, overwhelmed and confused, Marcus finally told her the truth about his tests. He expected anger, hurt, betrayal. Instead, she looked at him with understanding far beyond her years. "Mr. Ashford," she said quietly, "I'm sorry that people hurt you so badly that you felt you needed to test me. But I'm glad I could remind you of something important." "What's that?" he asked, his voice rough with emotion. "That kindness isn't a transaction. It's just the right way to treat people, whether they're testing you or not." Marcus Ashford lived another 7 years. In that time, Elena became like the daughter he'd always wanted, not because of his money, but despite it. She challenged his cynicism, called him out when he was being difficult, and loved him for who he was, not what he had. When he finally passed away peacefully in his sleep, surrounded by Elena, her mother and her brother, the true family he'd found in his final years, his biological children were shocked to discover that the bulk of his estate had been left to charitable foundations. But there was a special provision in the will. To Elena Rodriguez, he left something worth far more than money. His wife's collection of handwritten journals, filled with recipes, wisdom, and love. The accompanying note read, to Elena, who reminded me that the most valuable things in life cannot be bought, sold, or tested. Thank you for your honesty, your integrity, and most of all, for treating a lonely, old man with dignity when you had no reason to do so except that it was the right thing to do. The story of Marcus and Elena spread through their community, not as a fairy tale about a billionaire and a maid, but as a reminder that in a world obsessed with wealth and status, the greatest riches are still found in human decency, in the choice to do right when no one is watching, and in the courage to value character over currency, sometimes the most powerful thing we can give. Another person isn't an opportunity or a fortune. It's the simple act of seeing their worth when everyone else looks right through them. And sometimes the greatest test of character isn't how we behave when we're being judged, but how we treat others when we hold all the power. Elena still visits Marcus's grave every week, bringing fresh roses from the garden she once tended. She's now a successful businesswoman herself, running one of the foundations Marcus established. And she teaches her own children the same lesson her mother taught her, that integrity isn't about what you take when no one's looking, it's about what you give when there's nothing in it for you.